dangerous talk coming out of the Trump administration. You set this piece up by saying, could he make bad situations worse? Yes, he could. The Trump national security strategy right now is incoherent. You have multiple voices saying different things, espousing different strategies. Secretary Tillerson says it's time to talk with North Korea. Vice President Pence says no, it's not. McMaster's talking about preventive war, a war to stop something that doesn't yet exist, prevent this threat from further emerging. And then this incredible statement from Lindsey Graham, one of the most irresponsible statements that I've heard from a senior Washington official. The war over there, we have 28,000 U.S. servicemen and women in North Korea, plus families and dependents. We're talking about the destruction of the 11th largest economy in the world in South Korea. This is just irresponsible talk. There is no military solution. What you saw yesterday at the UN is part of a diplomatic solution, a stick, strong sanctions, but it's got to be coupled with plans for talks, for plans to freeze the program. General McMaster seems to just dismiss this, incorrectly stating, by the way, in that interview that China had agreed that a freeze for freeze North Korea and freeze U.S. South Korean military exercises was rejected by China. That's not true. China did not reject it. Either he doesn't know that or he knows it and is saying it anyway. I don't know which is worse.
And, you know, Will, I'm going to come back to the diplomacy angle because there's a lot to talk about with the State Department here. But the idea of sort of cavalierly saying that we would launch a preventive war against North Korea, which has behaved the same way for decades, it's not as if they've suddenly changed. They may be trying to test this new president. But the idea of sort of talking in this blustery way about a preventive war with North Korea, they didn't mention the people like yourself that would have to do the fighting and the dying in this. I mean, what do you make of all of this?
Absolutely. You know, Joy, first of all, I agree with a lot of points that Joe just now made, and I really think that if you were to sort of look at the marquee of Donald Trump's capriciousness, his foreign policy has to be what shines the brightest. I mean, here we have, you know, this situation going on in North Korea. We have him sort of every day changing his tone on Afghanistan, whether it's, you know, deploying a MOAB one day or then recently suggesting maybe we shouldn't even be there. You know, a couple things are coming to light. One, Donald Trump has no plan whatsoever when it comes to foreign strategy. And two, while being sort of a, you know, carnival barker may help you whip up electoral votes, it does nothing to prepare someone to be an effective commander-in-chief, something Donald Trump proves every single day that he is not.
Yeah, and he's somebody who didn't serve. He famously got 5 deferments from Vietnam. I think it never hurts to remind people of that. Now, here, you know, back to the point that Joe was making about the diplomacy side of it being completely a mess. The State Department itself has been described as a hot mess. That is in the Washington Post. You also have the fact that Rex Tillerson, who is seen by many people as completely ineffective, he's hidden from view. He seems to get one-upped by Jared Kushner, of all people, doing his job. He did actually meet with South Korean and Chinese diplomats, including the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and there was a press conference after these direct talks with a North Korean diplomat, and this is just one quote from that, and this is what the Chinese Foreign Minister had to say. Said, do not violate the UN's decision or provoke international society's goodwill by conducting missile launching or nuclear tests, and that's what Mr. Wang said about Korea. He also added, of course, we would like to urge other parties like the United States and South Korea to stop increasing tensions. That is China's view. Do we have even the capacity right now in the State Department to do diplomacy?
No, we don't, and that's unfortunate because at the end of every war, you have a negotiation and a peace settlement. And as far as the North Koreans are concerned, that never happened in the Korean War. We are still in a permanent armistice. And so they think that the U.S. is ready to go to war any day now, and that's part of their bravado. And so anything that Donald Trump does, anything that the generals say that provokes a war or leads to that argument of war, it plays right into the North Koreans' hands rather than the diplomatic solution, which would be to bring North Korea, South Korea to the table, put some pressure from regional actors, and have this finally be settled once and for all. So this war talk is actually playing right into North Korea's psychology, and frankly, into the psychology of a lot of other enemies of the United States around the world who want to be able to take the battle to us directly when fighting, because they don't have the ability to hurt us economically with sanctions or any of these other tools. And that's the challenge of diplomats. They have to deal on the ground with the reality of what's going on in a country. They understand the history. If you don't understand the history, you are doomed to repeat it. None of that exists in the State Department right now because senior positions haven't been filled. This is an administration in general that poo-poos the idea of diplomacy and negotiating. So you have people who are trained, ready to help the United States solve some of these really challenging and tractable problems. But the only people who are empowered right now are the ones who want to solve problems with bombs and war.
And you know, Evan, you have a guy who ran for office claiming that Hillary Clinton would start World War III, and a lot of his supporters, including some people who crossed over from the far left to vote for Donald Trump, saying, well, he's the guy who will not have a war. Now you have all of this war talk about North Korea. Have ICBMs that can hit the United States. A guy who described war advice to advice he got from a paid consultant from a New York restaurant who knows nothing about military strategy, talking this way about a shooting war with North Korea. I mean, and it looks like Republicans, at least Lindsey Graham, are down with it. What is going on here?
Well, I can't wait for Tim and Nina Zagat to release their how Trump should do foreign policy, because that's basically what he was saying when he brought in the 21 Club analogy. Well, I think there is some very smart diplomacy going on at the United Nations. Michael McFaul, President Obama's former ambassador to Russia, is very complimentary toward Nikki Haley and the new sanctions that came in yesterday. But at the same time, as Nair was talking about, the diplomatic staff isn't there to go out and advise the administration about what these sanctions do and how they're toothless. It's undercut by actions of China and South Korea, because South Korea is giving so much foreign aid to North Korea, it cancels out these sanctions. So I think that what we need to actually do is focus the president and focus the administration and fill the State Department so they can have the right advisors.
Who's going to do that? I mean, Joe Cirincione focused the president. You can't even get him to stop tweeting. Are you kidding me? I don't think that he's a focusable guy. Well, go ahead, Joe.
This is the core problem. The incoherence starts at the top. That Washington Post story that you've been citing is just astonishing. They call the president the 2-minute man because his attention wanders after 2 minutes. In other words, this segment that we're doing right now is twice as long as the president can devote to national security. He reads the first half page of a memo. You can't even describe the problem in a half page in a memo. He tweets out that with national security, tougher is better. No, Mr. President, in national security, smarter is better. And that, unfortunately, is the key ingredient we seem to be lacking in the Trump national security doctrine.
And Will, you know, this president has counted on the strong support in at least polls among members of the military and military veterans. This direction that he's going in, I cannot imagine is relished by people who actually fight the wars in this country.
No, absolutely not. You will find among people who have been in forward areas, who have been in combat zones, that the reality of those situations will often lead one to pursue those diplomatic negotiations. And I think when you talk, going back to the diplomacy bit for a moment as regards to North Korea, one of the things that's so important to recognize is that these negotiations, what they seek to do is to prevent, not necessarily immediately North Korea deploying a nuclear weapon to the United States as soon as they have one, but doing so after they, as a result of escalated military action from a shooting war that they would inevitably lose, that then could lead to them deploying that nuclear weapon. The Kim family, look, their main objective is to stay in power.
Right.
That's more important to them than anything, and that needs to be remembered at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. Evan Siegfried will be back in the next hour. This is a great panel. Naira Hawk, Joe Cirincione, Will Fisher. We'll hope you guys will all come back. I think we're going to be talking about this again. Thank you. All right, and coming up in our next hour, a Fox News host has an Anthony Weiner problem. And move over.